By the hoary hosts of Hogarth, this is Two on One, the internet's top sensation, in which two disciples theologians talk to a theologian about their pop culture topic of their choosing. Uh, for those of you who know what I'm talking about and the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak, we're glad to be talking Doctor Strange today, particularly Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But first and foremost, I am the 616 variant of the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
Oh, that's a good one. I still like that you're still a variant of J.R. Foresteros.
Yes, I'm still a variant of J.R. Foresteros.
And I am the Scarlet Spiff because I think that I am very reasonable. I've been very reasonable, Arthur, these last couple of weeks. And yet, there is rage.
Well, what is grief except needing to burn down the multiverse?
Ooh, girl, it is one of those things. As you know, I just got back from a trip abroad, and one of the things that was very funny, we went in and we went to a local bar in Tiberias in the Galilee, and I was asking a bartender because he was just like shaking this cocktail really like vigorously. I was like, "What is in that?" And he just goes, "Vodka, vermouth, and rage." And I was like, "I'll take two." Like, yeah. It was very much like, oh, I get what is happening here.
You know what? Make that whiskey instead of vodka, and that might be the Arthur Stewart from 5 years ago.
Oh, I mean, I'm not a vodka drinker, but it was just one of those things that the fact that he very adamantly named rage as part of it spoke to my soul, because as I have, been abroad, I was in Israel and Palestine, and I came back to the States and everything is on fire.
So everything's on fire, and clergy and actually lady, everyone who is listening to us right now, your voice matters, and the putting yourself between the powerful and the weak is vitally important. We want to remind you of the ethic and the import of participating in our, for now, democratic republic, fighting against autocracy and standing up for the rights of individuals and communities. One way you might want to do that is by wearing your custom-made Jeff Wunrow protest stole that Spiff is modeling for those of you watching on video. And for those of you who are listening, it is just the most beautiful thing. It's one of the very few items I covet. It is meticulously handmade and customized. Spiff is mighty in being and short of stature, but it is cut and presented precisely. It has a disciple's chalice on the nape of the neck. It has a custom quote of scripture on the inside. Y'all are really missing out if you're not watching this.
Watching Spiff model this, my protest, which I did bring with me to Israel and Palestine. I bring it with me everywhere. I did not anticipate wearing it, and I will name that I didn't for lots of different reasons. I did not wear it outside, but I did show it to my group, and they were all like, and it was an ecumenical group, and people of all statures and sizes, and everyone was very excited about this. And I did wear it on Saturday, the day I got off the plane.
So do note that Jeff Wunrow Designs is an ecumenical creator of liturgical textiles, celebrating 17 years of making ordinary time extraordinary with stoles, paraments, copes, chasubles, altar accessories, and of course, banners as well. Go to jeffwunrow.com to check out the full catalog and also customization options. You can use our promo code 2on115. 15 are digits, 2on1 are letters, 2on115. For 15% off your entire stole order.
I like that you're calling them digits, because that way, because I can never remember numbers and letters, although as we reminded people last week, 2 weeks ago, Spiff does know her letters and numbers.
So she claims. But once again, that is 2on1, TWOONONE 15. That's Jeff Wunrow, JEFFWUNROW.com. Please go. But after our show, and we are going to welcome in the nexus of all realities and our dear friend, please welcome to the show, the Reverend Elizabeth Grasham. Hello, welcome to 2on1, Elizabeth.
Hello.
We're glad you're here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Who are you? What do you do? And what should we know about you?
I'm Reverend Elizabeth Grasham. I serve a Christian Church, Disciples of Christ Church in Northeast Oklahoma. That's basically almost Kansas. The only Democrats in the town go to my church, I guess. And what you should know about me is that my parents read comic books, and my mom's favorite was Doctor Strange. And so I grew up with graphic novels around the house that I used to read and not understand. And they took us to Star Trek conventions, and Star Trek was probably my first fandom. And I've been a devoted watcher of all things MCU ever since they started coming out. So I'm excited to have this conversation about corporate fan fiction.
I have a question. Do you own Vulcan ears? And what is your rank in Star Trek?
So I have a couple different Star Trek costumes. I have a scant, which is in the first episode of TNG. Both men and women are wearing what looks to be a dress uniform.
Yes.
It's called a scant. I have one of those in blue that I wear for my Deanna Troi costume, because she's the closest the Star Trek, the Enterprise has to a chaplain on board. So I have that. It's Counselor Troy before she goes through the commander training. And then I also have a mashup costume, because my husband and I do a lot of mashup cosplay. So it's Star Wars and Star Trek. So I have a 7 of 9 TIE fighter costume. 7 of 9 is the Borg from Voyager. So like the Empire, like fighter pilot with like the black helmet and whatever, like I have that with like the chessboard, and then the 7 of 9 like face implants, so with a blonde wig. So
I just love it. You are my favorite nerd. You know that I mean just so much in there.
You just gotta love what you love, you know.
Well, we're here to talk about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. A reminder to our listeners and viewers, of course, we are a spoiler show. Let's get right into it. Actually, can we start with the Illuminati scene? Is that okay?
Well, can we start? I have a question. Can we start with overall, what did you think of the movie?
Okay.
The first thing I tweeted was, I guess Marvel has is going with a direction thematically that they started with No Way Home, which is nonviolent atonement. Because at the end of No Way Home, right, the whole thing is about redeeming villains and not giving up on the chance that they can do good, like that they're not damned, right? And Peter even like is like Gerardian atonement going on, like Peter takes on this incredible crushing consequence so that villains can return home and do good. And that's a total change, right? From Endgame, wherever, where it's like, we have to die. That violence is the necessary mechanism by which we fix things. And so with Strange at the very end, like, it's not violence that solves anything, it's compassion. And then I don't think she's dead. But then like the decision to give away power is what ends the crisis. So there's sacrifice, but it's not violent in the sense that like, I have to kill you to achieve something. It's women surrounding each other, and then reflection moving towards redemption. So like, I don't know who has joined Marvel's writing staff, but they are doing really interesting things with what it means to save that they weren't doing, I guess, in the other ones. Maybe they were doing it in Black Panther. But still Black Panther ends with death, right? This one, there's plenty of death in this, but it's not what saves everybody.
I love that. I never got Doctor Strange. Like, I was a big Marvel kid. The Infinity Gauntlet was like my favorite falling apart graphic novel when I was a child, and like I never got Doctor Strange. I was glad to see Rintal, the big green Minotaur, because he
that was great.
Infinity Gauntlet, but it was a, you know, Doctor Strange 1, when I watched it, I was like, this is Iron Man. This is literally the plot points of Iron Man. It's just magic.
Which is why they hate each other.
Right.
They're the same person.
It's well, no, I mean, it's literally the plot of Iron Man.
Right.
And so like Doctor Strange 2 and going into it, and So I went to go see this movie on opening day. I bought one of 3 sold tickets in the theater. And the 2 guys who were sitting like 8 rows behind me when I walked in, I said, "Is it cool if I sit in front of you? Will you be able to see around me?" And about an hour in, before the Illuminati scene, one of the guys goes, "This is bad." I didn't enjoy it. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It was an okay movie. I loved the Illuminati scene. I get where they were going. I just don't think I like Sam Raimi, which
because I was about to ask. It's a very Sam Raimi movie.
it's an incredibly Sam Raimi movie. And, like
There's a lot of Evil Dead references in that too.
there is, almost to the point where actually, Spiff, I want you to talk about it, but please talk. I'm sorry. I'm talking too much.
No, you're not. It's fine. It was after a really hard week. It was nice to sit down and watch something familiar after being apart. And yet it did take a turn in which I was like, this is trying to do too much a little for me in some regard. And but I still enjoyed it. But it was bringing in lots of different things that I was very, granted, I was jet lagged and I was like, this is just a lot. And while I appreciate the multiverse and all that it can contain, sometimes editing down for a singular story is helpful. It's like when our sermons are, we're trying to do 19 different things in one sermon. You're like, all of these things are good, but if we just take out maybe 2 of them, the point may be a little bit better understood.
Sam Raimi's never been accused of doing too little.
Yeah.
No, he
hasn't. A lot of
hasn't.
things well.
But there's a lot of fun cameos in it, and but also those kind of threw me. I think I will say I was.
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
No.
So I want to talk about the big cameos, if we could, in the Illuminati. Yeah. I've been so excited about this, and I'm so sorry, Spiff. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
So first of all, from the comics perspective, right? The Illuminati were first developed in 2005, and it was Professor X and Mr. Fantastic, and usually like the Black Panther, who was like, "I'm not doing this," and Namor, the Submariner. But it was supposed to be like representatives of the power brokers in the MCU, or Marvel Universe rather. But their very first thing, they go to the Kree or the Skrulls. They go to the Skrulls and they say, "You're not going to do this anymore. You put us in the middle of your war. You will not do this." And the Skrulls capture them and experiment on them, and they barely get away with their lives. So that should have been the end of the Illuminati. And instead, it's all about power, and it's all about I'm going to call it ownership. And I also recognize my own baggage about this, right? I loved John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. It made my heart so happy. And Professor X was 90s cartoon Professor X.
Yes, I hooted out loud in the theater.
Right.
When he came on screen.
I turned around to the 2 guys 8 rows behind me, and I was like, and they but every congregation has an Illuminati that is overt or not. I would argue that there's a center of power that is unofficial, as well as a center of power that is official. I would say that's present in regions. I would say that's present in any structure, because it has to be. Do we let the Illuminati do their job, or do we fight against them? Is really my first question as we talk about congregational life and life of faith. Or rather, what does Dr. Strange and the Multiverse of Madness tell us about power and control versus power and participation?
Well, right. Like one of Rachel McAdams' lines to Strange in multiple universes is, "You have to hold the knife." Right. And that's why there is no universe in which they end up together, because in every iteration of who he is, he doesn't learn the lesson of power until it costs him everything, until it scars him. And even then, he holds on. He's changed, but he's not totally changed. And that acknowledgement in the end of the movie that I found surprising. That took like 20 movies for Tony Stark to do. But Strange, I guess, being faced with every iteration of himself and every grief of possible self has to finally say what's true about power. And the Illuminati is just trying to do what the Sokovia Accords did in the prime universe that we're used to watching. How do we control power that can do harm, which is also the story of Wanda, right? So that was one of the big themes of the movie, is like, what does power do to us? And how do our rationalizations about how we wield power do harm and do good? And like the Illuminati is an attempt to stave off the worst of us without acknowledging the fact that it creates a hierarchy of humanness. It's ironic that the Illuminati has Professor X on it, right? Because he's the one who advocates for like broad integration of the mutants and the humans together, and having a power broker table up at the top to like decide like how things work, and having him on it. I'm wondering, what's the inner monologue to rationalize that decision, because that seems more like a Magneto thing to do than a Professor X thing to do. Though Magneto became a separatist and created his own country where everybody eventually died because of Wanda, right?
Kind of.
In N?
I mean, there was no, because Cassandra Nova, Professor X's weird Mumidry evil half that he thought he destroyed in the womb, came back in Grant Morrison's X-Men run, and she sent Wild Sentinels to wipe out the nation of Genosha.
Right.
Anyway,
I thought there was a line where like I think Wanda created something like a false reality where mutants could live on their own.
House of M. And
House of M, that's what I'm thinking of.
No more mutants, and knocked a very small population down to
apparently
198, but weirdly all of the X-Men kept their powers except
so convenient.
Just in that universe.
I'm sorry. That's deep dive number one.
No, it's fine. One of the things, I'll name. So Illuminati always hits me kind of weird. So because I did not grow up in church. I did not grow, as everyone knows, but I did grow up with the Masons. And I am a past matron of the Order of the Eastern Star. I wear my past matron necklace right here. I went to seminary. My first year in seminary was my worthy matron year. So I flew back and forth to LA every month. And there is conspiracy theory ties to Masonic understandings and Illuminati. So I'm always curious about how it's portrayed, how it's understood, what does it mean, how do fraternal and Star Orders understand each other in relation to these larger pictures. But I was also so that was just one of the things that I was just like, oh, that's interesting that there's always this understanding of like hierarchical dynamic power. However, I'm also, as we just named, I just came back from a trip abroad in which I, did a Holy Land trip. And one of the things that I plan on doing, so if you are from my congregation, I don't know, skip this part or just pause until I do this with our community, was we went to the Mount of Beatitudes. And we always talk about, Jesus preaching and people coming, all of that. Well, when we were there, we realized that actually Jesus preached from the bottom of the hill, not the top. And so because it's
an amphitheater,
it's just a hill, honestly, but like the countryside kind of makes that kind of, it's how his voice would have carried, and it's how people would have seen the crowds gathering. And so as I was watching the power dynamics in that way, I was like, well, who actually has the power? Who is speaking? And what might it look like if we think about it in that way, that Strange is actually giving them the information that they need? How do you move that dynamic? It looked very much obviously like an altar, like our preaching altars that are like these top-down understandings. But for what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of my congregation, put them up in the altar, and I'm going to preach from down below, because I think that there is the movement of that power is important, like in our bodies. And I think that happens in that scene when they move and Strange goes and Professor X is like, here, here's the information, and those power dynamics, and what does it mean to actually move your body as your spirit and your mind grow.
Well, and it was a position Strange Prime had never been in, right? Yeah. That like beseeching posture.
Mm-hmm.
that he absolutely couldn't have done in the first movie. And he couldn't have done until after Endgame, right? Because the only possible future where they win is one where he dies.
Mhm.
So he has to choose that. And he comes and asks for succor, and they're like, dude, we're pretty sure you're the most dangerous man in the universe. And I was like, ain't it funny how we always underestimate women?
Yep.
So did they do Wanda dirty in this movie, or how
No.
dirty? No,
No.
you don't think so?
Absolutely not. Okay, so here's my thing. Right, she becomes the Scarlet Witch in WandaVision without the Darkhold.
Yes.
Right? Even though the Darkhold has prophecies about her, she accesses that power and comes into it on her own. And WandaVision, she is the villain of that story because she is doing harm.
Mhm.
She doesn't know it. And then when they finally like make her face it, she lets it go without any kind of reparations, right? But she's like, according to the comics, she's literally the most powerful being in the universe. You can't make her do anything.
Mhm.
Nothing. Like, she's a nexus. Like, and so at the very end, like the last scene of WandaVision is her looking at the Darkhold, right? So this whole movie, she knew what she'd done was wrong and she doubled down, right? She is like white woman grievance as a character, right? This is the ultimate.
Yep.
Yes.
I will get what I want. Damn you all.
Mm.
Like, literally, I will damn you all to get what I deserve, because she has been wronged and yet enslaving everybody and committing murder. She like rationalized all of it. So in the
didn't even see it.
no, not
she
until
says to Billy and Tommy at the end, like, I wouldn't hurt anyone.
yeah, and you're like,
Murdered dozens, if not hundreds.
there's a lot of dead people.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of dead people. That kind of like deep denial of the harm you've done. She knew what she was doing was wrong, and she went into it because she deserved it. Right. Well, and she's like got all those great villain speeches, you know, like, you do it and you're the hero, and like, that's true. And I do it and I'm the villain. I'm like, well, you keep doing it over and over again, Wanda. I don't know if there's a lot of like wiggle room at a certain point. You keep looking at the Book of the Damned to try to kidnap a girl and steal her soul. So let's do some reflection together.
Well, it's to steal her powers and kill her. And
right. Like,
But so what does Wanda deserve?
well, according to nonviolent atonement, she deserves redemption.
mm-hmm.
No matter the evil that she's done, she deserves a chance to repent of it and turn around and do what is right. You know, like, that's the abolitionist thing. Are we so committed to punishment that we've failed to see how that doesn't serve any of us ultimately? Because it's not punishment that makes her turn at the end. She, like, there was no way that was going to end unless she chose it to end because of how powerful she is.
So I'm sorry, Spiff, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing.
So it's funny because she punishes Agatha at the end of WandaVision. It's a horrible
She
thing.
does. It is.
And so she escapes punishment because she, on her own terms, finds a way to eliminate the Darkhold across reality. I think in some part they did Wanda dirty in that she's the most powerful Avenger. She has a history since her appearances in 1963. She, for those of you who aren't steeped in Marvel lore, Wanda Maximoff and her brother Pietro were both members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which I love as a team name.
Just commit to it right at the top.
Start the fraternity of pissed off ministers or something. Like, just own it. And her power was this ill-defined hex power, which first started as just like hex bolts, and then it turned into she can alter probabilities. So therefore, what's the probability of this dock exploding that you're running on? Well, now it's 1-to-1 instead of 4 trillion to 1. The more it took, the more energy, this and that. They've never known what to do with the Scarlet Witch in comic books for 50 years. So she like goes evil, possessed or evil or like messed up and then comes back, and then she's weak, and then she goes evil, and she's always in, not always, but often in relationship to the Vision or to Wonder Man, who, God, they need to get Nathan Fillion to play Wonder Man sooner than later. That would be amazing. But there's always this, they finally leaned into like, she's inherently powerful, and they still don't quite know what to do about it. And
I don't know that they've had women write her yet.
I don't think they have.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem.
Oh, you mean women should write women?
I think that women understand women with power.
I don't know. I mean, I've read a lot of novels. I think I can handle it. Y'all like chocolate.
Outta here.
We all like chocolate. Yes, that's it.
That by the way,
Our driving force.
that was casual, and it was still not, it was done tongue in cheek, and it's still not okay. I'm sorry. I don't even like to do joking misogyny. So
Okay.
my apologies.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, like Scarlet Witch throughout the stories is complicated,
Mhm.
right? And I don't know, I find that honest, like who amongst us with incalculable power, who we realize one day nobody can hold us accountable, doesn't cross lines. Like, absolutely we do. Then there's always a reason we will cross the line. We're like, oh, I'm just doing this for my kids, or I'm just doing it for my neighborhood. Like, there's always a reason why we can use the power the way we would, even if we shouldn't. And
Power
so
tends to corrupt. Yeah.
I find that a more authentic take than Superman.
Mm.
Because he's the same kind of character. And a Boy Scout? Are you kidding? Like, I mean, the Zack Snyder Batman Superman movies was terrible. Just throw it in the garbage forever. But the most honest part of that, of Batman's like, no, you have to die. Like, we have no idea what you're gonna do if you go evil. You could kill us all. And he's right. He's right. And I know that was the plan in the Zack Snyder universe. Blah, blah, blah. I don't care about that. Those are all bad movies. But like, creatures with power are corruptible,
Well,
hands down.
so there has to be accountability.
Right.
My favorite part of the Illuminati scene, after just the guitar riffs of the 90s X-Men cartoon thing Professor X rolled in, Danny Elfman deserves the Nobel Prize for that. Like, and I know that that's not what Nobels are put for. I don't care. But the best part was that Doctor Strange and Baron Mordo fist fought.
Yes.
It wasn't a magic fight. They just digressed. They were literally in the pit,
Yep.
pommeling each other because they had no other way. There was no nuance. There was no finesse. It was just, what's right. I'd lost my words, and I love words. So I don't know. Perhaps that's a variant.
Well, when you lack the capacity to like understand, have compassion, see the value in another person, and it becomes might versus right, it always devolves. So I don't know. I don't think Wanda was done dirty. I mean, the complicated history of the character and the comics aside, like I said this earlier, I think of the MCU as corporate fan fiction, right? Because they like look at the comics and they're like, that's neat. Let's do it. What if we did that? They had a whole show called that. And like, that's all fan fiction is what if the Scarlet Witch like had a guitar? And so like, what if Baron Mordo and Doctor Strange punched each other in a pit? What if Wanda met up with Reed Richards? I also might be a tad angry if I was condescended to by the smartest man alive.
Consistent. Yeah. All
Um,
By the way, Doctor Strange's main powers are mansplaining and treating women like they're morons. And I know that those are similar,
Yeah.
but like,
I don't mind that he gets hit a lot.
No,
so
I really don't.
I think it's a interesting point maybe with the Illuminati, or with bringing folks together and talking about fan fiction, right? Everything we do right now, preaching is fan fiction.
Oh, 100%.
There was a great College Humor bit years and years and years ago where they were like, Christians are nerds. And
Yes.
like nerds fight about canon and nerds argue minutia.
They have conventions.
So what if we
See you at GA 2023.
yes, the theme incidentally is the Fantastic Four.
There isn't.
Oh, it's not. Can it?
As your first vice moderator, I can tell you it is absolutely not.
Can I propose?
CampbellCon. Holla. CampbellCon's theme can be
Oh, CampbellCon. Yeah. So what I think it becomes, do we play what if with the church enough? Do we play what if with our faith enough? Because I think we, in the pursuit of orthopraxis and orthodoxy, we forget to play.
right.
Yeah, I preached a sermon on Sunday called Jesus Comes Out because I've never seen it in Mark before. In late Mark 1, he says, I've come to proclaim the good news. That is what I have come out to do. And I said, so what does it mean for Jesus to come out as a leper? Yeah.
Well, I mean, Christians eschew the heritage of the rabbis, right? That midrash stuff. Where in the gaps of the story can we tell our own stories? Where can we wonder, which is the children worship and wonder, the godly play thing. The best part of that is I wonder where you are in this. I wonder if you could take anything out and it would be the same. I wonder if you could add anything in and it would be the same. And that inclination to wonder is something that when the geek community does well, it's transcendent, They care for each other, they make space for people of all kinds. They tell stories that change lives. They're united around themes that matter. And the church used to do that, but the church doesn't do it much anymore. I would say that fandom is the new ecclesia.
Oh, okay. So I mean, you kind of introduced that, but is that, I need to sit with that for a second.
I like that a lot.
Okay, so how this is a good question. And I should note that one of the questions I'm really dealing with right now is what does the church have to learn from other storytelling communities? Improvisational comedy, Dungeons and Dragons, Alcoholics Anonymous. Like what can we learn about what the church should do from other spaces that do it better? So if fandom is the new ecclesia, what are a few things that we could take back to congregations and say, the nerds?
Joy. Just my husband and I met at a convention, so I'm biased here, but
of course you did.
I remember at the first Dragon Con I went to, it was like the 25th anniversary of Deep Space Nine, which is the best Star Trek.
It is.
Just oh, do we lose?
No.
Okay. So
we can keep going. I mean, he'll hear us. Yeah.
It was a panel of a lot of the folks from Deep Space Nine, including Commander Sisko, and he was a big deal, right? He's the first Black commander, captain, or whatever.
I will have to just name. I have only seen the first movie that came out in 2009.
Okay, so you've only seen the Kelvin timeline. Okay, yeah. So after
and I've only seen one, and that was
okay. It. So after Star Trek: The Next Generation, the next series that came out was Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, and it was a space station near a wormhole, lots of stuff there. But the commander of the space station is a Black man, and he has these incredible storylines. And he's a single father because in the first episode you see his wife die in a terrible attack, and so he's raising his young Black son, and so it's wonderful. The whole show is wonderful. If you liked Battlestar Galactica, Ron Moore wrote on Deep Space Nine, and then he went to Battlestar, and he got to do a lot of stuff on Battlestar they wouldn't let him do on Star Trek. Anyway, so at this panel, we're all super geeked out because we all love the show, and it's just a room full of 100 strangers, right? And this young Black man gets up and goes to the mic, and he's like, I need you to know how important it was for me growing up to every week to watch this show and to see you. And he's talking to Avery Brooks, and he's like, to see you, and because I wasn't seeing you in the world around me or on TV. I wasn't seeing the possibility of what it meant to be a Black man. And my whole row is in tears. We don't know each other, right? But this witness of this testimony, right? And it's like we're teared up because of joy, like because this story is more than a story. It functions as a mythos that like elevates us, right? And so we all walk out of that panel like jittery with excitement because stories don't stay, they grow and they bloom and they take root in people's lives and they change them. And so I think that that's the big thing that the church lacks all the time is like, do you know how rad the story of Jesus is? Like, why are you telling it like this is a funeral? Why don't people walk out and are like, oh, yeah, like why don't they sit with strangers and like tear up at testimonies about like the good news?
I would say I think that is also a difference in the white church and the black church that
yeah, that's true.
I think the black church leans more into the joy,
right,
and just the entire experience of black church, in my experience, is much more rooted in the liberative joy of Jesus. And not to say that there aren't wrestling with some of the harder things, but
yeah, you're right.
But also one of the things that I think that we as the church need to take away from, or can take away, and joy is absolutely one of them, is the ability to say that we are wrong and to say that there is more than what we understand. Because I think that we can only take in so many more stories if we're willing to say part of our story may need expanding, and not just layered on layered, but a deeper and more nuanced understanding of what is going on. Because we can say, wow, Wanda's the most powerful woman in the world, but she's still, it's for her children, and it's still family oriented, and there's still this very kind of patriarchal lens in which you have to still view Wanda's role within this universe. And we're not taking into account mental health. We're not taking in, because part of it is grief and trauma. She had to blow in Viz's head. Like she had to deal with that. And this is how it is manifesting, because she has not dealt with it. And yet, and we're like, oh, we get that. Oh, a mother's love. And we're like, we're okay with Strange being just an asshat to all the women and like foregoing his family, and it plays very much into the male role model, save the world, look at him go. And what might nurture have done to, and grief counseling and love and, care have done to Wanda in the long run.
Where's the Marvel chaplain? I don't know. Where's the Avengers chaplain?
So and that's a great question. Like, where is Doc Samson, who played by Ty Burrell in the Incredible Hulk movies? Because he's at least a psych. But like, what do we do without? We asked that question with Grey's Anatomy. Like, where are the chaplains at Sloan Gray Memorial Hospital, and do we not?
They all quit in fury.
They were like, absolutely not.
Oh, you all have no boundaries. Oh God, no.
I'm out.
I'm out. Exactly. But so of the current, let's say that we know, living Avengers, who would act at like next movie? Who do we hope shows up in that pastoral space?
Well, Falcon. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the right answer. But
that's how we met Falcon, right?
Yeah.
Taking seriously the trauma of soldiers, and then Steve takes on that role after Falcon gets dusted. And but I think that is not so much an indictment of the Avengers as it is of our larger culture that still doesn't understand the function of trauma or mental health, or even have the resources to put towards it.
We need Rita Nakashima Brock and her soul repair right in the middle of the Marvel.
Right. Like, there's no way the people left behind after the snap aren't all deeply wounded in their souls.
And there's no way the people who, once the snap restores things, but in a weird, like this is a global trauma.
Global trauma. It's a universal trauma. Like there is no living thing in all of creation that is not deeply wounded now. And if you like, I feel like we're living kind of that experience in a microcosm. Like, you know what we're doing with our trauma? We're not doing anything with our trauma. We are just all pushing through it, and the dead pile up, and we're just going to keep moving on. And so that feels like a really authentic part of the Avengers universe. Like, oh, we're just not going to deal with deep-rooted trauma that causes us to do incredibly bad things, because that's not our style.
We've been apart for 2 years, not 5, but I mean, we've all been snapped back, and we want to say that nothing. We want to live as quickly into what was rather than what is.
And like, I can't, right? Because my infant is 6 months old. Like, we don't go inside places because, you know, 1 million people are dead in America, and like 2 of those are my uncles who refused to get vaccinated, and so died terribly on ventilators. Like, you know, you feel like you're living in an alternate reality when you see people like doing things that are potentially deadly and long-term disabling and just going about it like it doesn't matter. But like, that kind of denial is part and parcel of the human experience, because if we don't deal with our trauma, like, our brains are really good at just shutting things out. Like, we're just going to pretend that didn't happen, and we're going to go because I need you to keep moving. And so
keep producing and keep turning a profit.
Keep producing, keep turning a profit, keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, Strange is traumatized.
Right.
Yep.
But won't deal with it. Though I did you see Geostorm? Okay, it's so bad.
I'm married to a man who loves stupid disaster movies.
So okay, me too. I love it so much. I saw Moonfall in the theaters. It's so bad. It's like Dadaist wonder. I love it so much. But in Geostorm, at the end, like, it's really bad, Gerard Butler kind of a thing. And at the end I was like, hey, I think that movie was accidentally about how women save everybody. Because in the end, like, all of the things that happen that save everybody, women do. Like, all the men fail and women save things. And like, that's what happened in Doctor Strange too, right? Doctor Strange is being overcome by the Sam Raimi evil spirits. And Rachel McAdams was like, aren't you a wizard? Yeah. And he's like, that's right, I'm a wizard. And she like takes the pot that's a gun, a spirit gun, and she's like, I know how to use this. I love that. Usually it's men who like,
and then she's like, go back to hell.
And then like, Doctor Strange doesn't save everybody in the end. He's like, oh no, she's got to do this. I'm not going to take this from her. This is hers to fix. And like, because she's got the power. And so America and the Wanda who's not possessed and the Scarlet Witch, they're the ones who actually turn things around. Or like the woman who sacrifices herself to destroy the Darkhold. And, you know, like, she burns like a pyre in front of Wong. Like, all the things that happen that turn things around are because of women in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's comfort the stronghold then, like, in some ways for us, like, as we're thinking about coming out. Sorry, Arthur, I cut you off.
No.
I was just, as we're talking about, like, the, you know, coming out of our own kind of snap, you know, like, and coming back in, so much of, you know, every movie moving forward or thus far has named the snap in it, right? At minimum, like, they haven't pretended like it didn't happen. There's always like, well, I wasn't, you know, some of us were gone too, or whatever that like thing at the very beginning. But there's always this kind of going back, like Wanda's trying to get back to something, right? There's the getting back to, and I think it's not lost that the hero of this is named America, and that's a whole other thing. But what, you know, comfort seems to be the thing that they're all trying to get back to.
Or she's trying to get back to her mom's.
Yeah, and I think that's true for us too, right? So much of our church is opening up. It's like, well, how do we get back? Where are our people? How do we get them back? Where, you know, how do we become the church that we were in the church that we are?
2 years ago, 5 years ago, or 20 years ago. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah. Are we a restoration movement? Spiff, is that what you're saying? Like, are we trying to get back to something?
Are we make the church great again?
Well, so and to be fair, within America Chavez, they did do America dirty, because America Chavez is like the biggest badass in the Young Avengers.
Yeah, they changed her powers.
Right. Well, she can punch reality and like punch holes in it, but yeah, it made it she basically pees herself, but instead of peeing, she breaks open a portal to another.
She was the living MacGuffin.
She was a living MacGuffin, and in the comics run, she's like this self-actualized badass. And she finally becomes that at the end, but it takes Doctor Strange being like, the power's been within you the whole
all along.
I diagnosed your inability. So I'm so glad she had that power, but like I think in the comic book, she would have punched Wanda in the face, or she would have fought the monster herself, not run screaming in high heels.
Did they make her younger than she is in the comics?
A little bit, but I couldn't really tell what age she was. And speaking of can't tell what age they are, Billy and Tommy look like they're 12, but they act like they're about 2 years old, but they are 2 years old, but would they be in every universe? I don't know.
Oh, my mom pointed out, because she's the Doctor Strange person, she was like, there is no universe in which the Scarlet Witch, in the multiverse, at least in the MCU, it seems like she cannot be the Scarlet Witch and have the boys.
No, yeah.
There's either one or the other, because all the other Wandas are not the Scarlet Witch, and they have. So I don't appreciate that kind of reductive, like women with power can't have children thing, because the men have power. Like Reed Richards has kids, I guess, and it's fine. And I did think that was pretty funny when she was like, "Do they have a mother?" Okay, and then she spaghettified him.
And blew up his head.
Yes. Woo! Oh, can we talk about Black Bolt for a second?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Did you recognize that actor?
It's Anson Mount.
It's Anson Mount.
From the failed ABC.
Inhumans.
Yeah.
Well, it was in the 80s. It was 2017.
No, from the failed ABC.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was like, he's not that old, Arthur.
Right.
Anyway, he's very handsome. He's an excellent Captain Pike. If you ever do an episode about Star Trek, like, call me.
Oh, you're Trekkie.
I was like, when Dr. Will Gaffney, we're gonna do it 1-2 and like get you all on here because
she talked about Discovery probably. I love it.
50 Star Trek shows nowadays. So.
Anyway, so I had forgotten that the Black Bolt's name was so silly.
Yes, Blackagar Blackathon.
Blackagar Boltagon.
Boltagon.
And so my dad was like, "You can call me Jonagon Boltagar." You like it's when he said it, I like out loud because like that is such a holdover from the comics, like what
Dr. Otto Octavius.
Right. And when they cracked up in No Way Home, thank you. That is what we all do. Okay.
And it's fun. I think it gets back to you saying like we've got to bring back the fun and the silly and the joy because it is fun and silly and joyous amidst the multiverse of chaos.
I always say that Jesus actually nicknamed Simon Rock because he couldn't swim.
Why not? Why does Jesus not have a sense of humor? He like that whole like
absolutely
log in your eye is obviously a joke.
He's walking with people on the road to Emmaus and they're like, "Do you not know what happened to Jesus of Nazareth?" And he goes, "No."
Tell me.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
I mean, there's so much tongue. Every time, the very first time I read the Bible, I was like, how much of this is like satire? Like, is it meant to be tongue in cheek? Is he like the first time you read some of these like statements by biblical characters, if you don't know the stories, it sounds very like, tell me, who do you say that I am? Like
God frequently in the Bible is kind of bitchy.
Yes.
Like in a funny way.
And like a great way. Yeah.
I am what I'm gonna do. I like it.
What? Okay, so I have a theater degree. And in one of our acting classes, one of the things we had to do was read scripts with no inflection. Mm-hmm. And Peter, one of the books we read with it is Peter Brooks's Empty Space, right? And in there, he talks about giving King Lear, one of the daughters of King Lear's speeches to a woman who'd never heard of the story. And in the play, if you know it, you know that the daughter is saying this like sarcastically and with like contempt. But this woman, not knowing any of that, read this speech to her father full of like it was true and loving and like not sarcastic at all. It was a speech of well regard, and that like all the meaning changed because of the reader, right? So learning to read speeches without inflection. What I would do is I would just pick a tone, like a musical tone, and I would just read it at a certain tone,
Mhm.
because that was the easiest way to do it. But like stripping things of the meaning that have been imputed to you forever, and then receiving it without background, does change the story. And it actually frees it in a pretty cool, beautiful way that enables like connections, and newcomers actually can come into the conversation, and add their 2 cents and change your mind, and like the story can build and transform and morph. I guess this is very disciples of me, but like the tradition is helpful, but the tradition can also be a gatekeeper. Which is, speaking of the church and geek communities, the church taught geek communities how to do that.
It did. And so you remember when the J.J. Abrams Star Trek universe came out?
Yeah, they're fun.
And
that's the one I've seen.
I had a couple of friends who were big Trekkies, and incidentally still are, and they were so mad because all of the extended universe and all of the Star Trek Academy and all this other stuff got tossed. When Star Wars kind of got bought by Disney, Disney just flat out said, like, we're going to tell the story how we want, and we're not going to pay homage to everything that's come before. You don't get to predict what this movie is going to do based on everything that's come, but we're also going to honor the spirit of it, and we're going to honor what's happened. And I think that's the geek communities on their best day do it, but just like the church, they struggle with control
because they mistake love for control, right? Like it's this is a story that means so much to me. It's changed my life. It's given me friends. It's helped build my community. I want to protect it. I want to honor it. And that becomes this Wanda move, right? Like it has to be mine to be able to do
I will destroy anything else that is in my way.
Like, I won't let you enjoy this thing. That's a really strong statement. Like, my whole family, we're all Trekkies, right? We love the Kelvin movies. Because at the very beginning, they're like, oh, it's just a different universe. You're like, got it. Do whatever you want. That rules.
So what stops us then? I mean, like my favorite scripture, I think, weirdly enough, is the Gerasene demoniac. And I've said this before and before, and I know it's not in the Corinthian letters. For those of you waiting, we're almost at the end of our time. I finally mentioned that I've been reading 1st and 2nd Corinthians for like 3 years at this point. Almost to chapter 10 of 2nd Corinthians. But the Gerasene demoniac, you have to play with the text because he asks to go with Jesus at the end. Yeah. He's the only person who does that. And Jesus says, no, you have to stay here. And of course, it's because then he can be like, hey, you're the guy who helped chain me in the graveyard. And now look, I'm back in your community. Oops, I'm voting. Or whatever. And the story has so many implications going into it and coming out of it. And we have to. Also, I just want to note that the whole like sending evil spirits into pigs, they also had, it's kind of a law enforcement joke even then. So.
Oh yeah. You don't name it Legion, it's not a law enforcement joke, okay?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I mean, the gatekeeper thing is so prevalent anywhere. Like, again, having the lens that I'm viewing everything through right now is just this trip that I've been on. But we went to the Church of the Assumption. So it's the church in which there's the cave of Mary Magdalene, or no, of Mother Mary, sorry, and where Jesus would have spent in Nazareth, where he would have spent his early life and things like that. It's an actual cave, and then there's this giant cathedral that's built around it, for those of you that have not been there. And there's a literal gate to the front of it, in which it's a Catholic space, so only the men can come in. So Mary, should she return, can never even go home. Like, we've gate kept so much from those seeking the faith that we've taken the home base, we've taken Mary's home away from her. Like, she, as a Jewish woman, would not be allowed in her own home today. And I think that we do that with scripture. I think that there's some ways in which we teach and understand that through what's happening with Wanda and what's happening with honestly all of these characters, and how we gatekeep who gets to know what, who gets to do what, and how to play what. Who gets to play what, and who gets to come together, is something that I think not only the MCU needs to wrestle with, but we as the church need to wrestle with, and we as individuals and faith leaders need to wrestle with. How are we gatekeeping in and of itself?
That's why I'm a big fan of the multiverse, because
Yeah.
it says it's possible.
Agreed.
Those things that are impossible for you exist already, you know? Too bad, I guess. Too bad. I actually on my computer have a sticker from the Loki show. It's Protect the Sacred Timeline. Because I have never seen a better discussion of determinism versus free will than in Loki. I was like, can we just watch the show instead of have to have a class on it ever again? Like,
So a fun fact for you, Spiff and I have edited a book on theology and pop culture called Are You Still Watching? And it is coming out in October from Chalice Press. And one of the essays is written by a friend of the show and marvelous human being, the Reverend Whitney Waller, about Loki and free will and determinism.
Wonderful. And that's what I like. They break it open and they say, like, the universe is bigger. People can do more. The roles are not settled. The future is open. And even this idea in Doctor Strange of incursions, where they clash and destroy each other, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, isn't that how we talk about the kingdom of heaven, as an incursion into this reality that will remake it? Like, that's good news.
And
It is.
I would argue the church as it is today is that broken, weird world that was incurred upon. That
Yes.
like,
At least it's not the color world where you just can't get out and you're all just color.
I think
And it's hard to eat.
Pizza balls.
Pizza balls aren't free. We haven't even talked about dreams. We haven't even talked about actually walking. There's so much to talk about, but I have to be cognizant of our time.
I have my scripture reference. I was thinking about it.
Yeah,
like,
no,
what story?
let's move into that.
Oh yeah, no. So let's move into our final question. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us. This has been so much fun and clearly could go on forever. And we can't wait to have you back, and you'll teach me about all the things Trekkie and Star Trek and all of those universes as well. And I can't wait. But what biblical theme, narrative, character, verse, anything, the multiverse of the Bible are you most reminded of in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse?
Samson.
Really?
Ooh, say more.
Pulls down the palace on herself at the end. She has a spirit of power that she abuses to her own ends. And in the end, the only way to redeem herself and save the world is to die. That's Samson.
Oh, that's good.
I love it. I mean, succinct and kind of perfect. I'm going to go a little earlier and say it's Balaam. It's Dr. Strange's Balaam, because he keeps trying to curse and he keeps trying to control, but all he can ultimately do is bless. And it is only by finally letting go of the knife that he is able to, when all you have is a hammer, you may be Thor.
Ooh, that's good too. I was vacillating between two. I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to go with Laban's warning, in that God warns Laban not to bless or curse Jacob as he heads home. And I think that there's something in the Strange Wanda America ending in which it's like, don't help her, let her do it on her own, where that path is chosen and she's got to do it on her own term. But I do think that there's something else. I'm just going to say my other one. I think that there's something about the Imago Dei and the multiplicity of the multiverse, that in which we talk to each other and talk to ourselves and talk to God, and the expansiveness of that, and finding another version of yourself and finding other people to be in conversation with, that both and don't, is that kingdom of God, that Imago Dei that is within all of us, that is how you can recognize that constitutive other that is within you.
I like to imagine that someday a variant of Arthur Stewart will break into this universe and he'll go, I'm sorry, Donald Trump was president?
Your timeline sucks.
Wait, and nobody wore a mask? Like, we took care of COVID in 2 weeks. What the hell? And I'm going to go, can I go with you? And then you go, no. And that's okay.
And that's why you're like, oh, I get Wanda now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I will
And
travel
now
to your future and take your body. Thank you.
sure.
Yeah, I just need another copy of the Darkhold. Mine got ripped out.
Just real quick, I
Yes.
think that she actually did get some of America's powers, which was the only way she was able to destroy the Darkhold in every possible universe.
Yeah, because she kept doing like the soul suck thing from Hocus Pocus, and
I think she got some of it, and instead of using it the way she intended, she destroyed all of the Darkholds.
Did she?
That's
Oh,
what. Well, I mean, that's what they say, but I also don't think she's dead. So
I don't
Well-
think she's dead, and I think that third eye of Strange is
Yep.
well, third eyes aren't necessarily bad.
no, no.
In a lot of like Eastern iconography, that's just a symbol of greater knowledge. So whether he chooses it to be good or bad,
I mean,
we can talk about Charlize Theron.
Oh, there's plenty to get into, especially with Clea,
next movie.
the Dark Dimension, and Dormammu, but that will have to wait for another time, which is marvelous. Elizabeth Grasham, thank you very much for coming on and
Thank you.
talking to us about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. A reminder, dear friends, we are sponsored by Jeff Wunrow, who's celebrating 17 years of making ordinary time extraordinary through creating beautiful liturgical textiles. Go to jeffwunrow.com, jeffwunrow.com. Check out their catalog and make us the happiest people in the world. On behalf of the 2-on-1 Project, I am the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
I'm the Reverend Stephanie Kendall.
I'm Reverend Elizabeth Grasham.
And we will see you again, deuces. And until then, don't eat any pizza balls. Goodbye. Get more 2-on-1 at twoononeproject.com.